Well, hello there. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. How are you? I hope you're enjoying your Christmas Eve. I certainly am. And yeah, on this Christmas Eve, I'm going to do another of these Hospital Porter Reacts videos because I know you like them. They seem to have been very popular. And indeed, they were originally, they began with a request, and so I've decided to continue them. For my brother Porter Jacob, Pride and Dignity brother, and for anyone else who might want to watch, and all the other porters and everyone else. Um, I've decided actually to do three over Christmas Day and Boxing Day too. So this is kind of a Christmas present for you guys. There's going to be one today on Christmas Eve, one tomorrow Christmas Day, and that is if I'm not too drunk, or maybe that might make it more amusing, mightn't it? And there's going to be one on Boxing Day as well. So I've got some lined up for. There's three Hospital Porter Reacts videos, and they're all about films. And I've got three categories to talk about. So, yeah, that's kind of a Christmas present from me to you, to all you people out there who've taken the time to watch my videos, to say what you think, to comment, anything, or even just share them around or just watch them and enjoy them quietly. That's fine with me. I really do appreciate that. So that's the reason for this. And I hope you're having a lovely Christmas Eve. And I hope this video makes your Christmas Eve even nicer. But we're going to talk about horror movies today. Yes, what's the best horror movie? Now, you're going to say to me now, "Oh, Ben, but you've already done that one. That was in your first video. It was the scariest movie." That's what Jacob asked. He wanted to know, what's your scariest movie? Well, there's a slight difference between what's the best horror movie and what's the scariest movie. If you remember from the first video, the scariest movies, well, at least two of the scariest movies, if I remember, certainly the scariest movie I've ever seen, in other words, the one which caused me the most fear. Let's be specific on our definitions now. The one that caused me the most fear was not a horror movie. It was the Star Trek The Motion Picture, and it had one scene of really extreme sci-fi horror in the middle of this film, which I thought was inappropriate and out of step with the rest of the movie. And as I explained, it horrified me so much, it stopped me enjoying the rest of the film. That's the film that scared me the most. Now, that, of course, scared me more. I mean, I was only a little kid when I saw it, which is why, than any horror movie I've ever seen. So what scares people and what is meant to scare are not necessarily the same things. I'm now going to go through a series of horror movies. These are in no particular order of importance. I mean, I don't have a single favourite horror movie. I have a series of, well, I've got a series here of 6 movies I'm going to talk about, which I believe are all extremely good. I think they're probably a collection of what I would consider the best horror movies. There may be others on the list I haven't thought of right now, but I do have seen. So that's what I'll do. So we'll begin in no particular. This is not the best one specifically, but it's one of the best. And we'll begin with The Asphyx. Now, The Asphyx is a film I saw on television long ago, and it did scare the hell out of me. It's a very, very, very stylish and very typical gothic horror movie from 1972. So this is the real heyday of that particular type of film. It comes out of the Hammer House of horrors, which of course were a classic series of films, classic productions of films. It's directed by Peter Newbrook, and it stars Robert Stevens, who's best known as a stage actor. He plays the main character. His co-star is Robert Powell. Is played by Robert Powell, who's quite well known nowadays. He went on to play Jesus of Nazareth, various other things, Hanny, that sort of thing. But it's set in the 19th century, like a lot of these types of films are. And the main character is a psychical researcher, and of course that era was a great heyday for psychical research. And he discovers something rather amazing. He discovers that when somebody, several times, he happens to be filming or photographing when someone's dying, and a strange image appears on the film, like a big cloud of mist or something like that. Now, believe it or not, that sort of thing has actually happened. There are real photographs in which that actually takes place. Excuse me. Now what he discovers is he actually goes on to discover something really quite remarkable. He discovers the existence of the Asphyx. The Asphyx, which is the title of the film, is from ancient Greek mythology. The Asphyx is actually a type of angel of death, a kind of little personal grim reaper. It comes for you when you die, and it takes your soul up to across the river Styx, and whatever the Greek vision of the afterlife was. I don't know all the details, but there's the river Styx. I know things like that. So it comes and it grabs you, and it grabs the soul away from the body at the moment of death. And what this psychical researcher then discovers, because he starts using a special light, a special spotlight, which is powered by some kind of chemical mixed with water, is that the Asphyx, when it comes down for some, he films an execution. A guy's about to be hanged, and he comes down and he captures the Asphyx in the spotlights. When the spotlight shines on the man, the Asphyx appears in the spotlight, and it can't escape. He gets trapped in that spotlight. And so, but while he's doing it, then the guy who's supposed to be hanged is just hanging there, and nothing's happening. He's not dying because the Asphyx can't take his soul because it's trapped in the spotlight. And so, only when he switches off the light, the Asphyx then grabs the man's soul and flies away, does he realise that does the man finally die. And so they discover what the two main characters discover is essentially immortality. By capturing someone's Asphyx in a spotlight, they can keep them alive forever, and so they try to do it themselves. It's a classic Fountain of Youth story. Now, this is an archetypal tale that exists in all kinds of mythologies. But as always, whenever you get this Fountain of Youth situation, there's many others, like, for example, the Cocoon, that's another one in modern fiction, but there's also ancient mythology that talks about a fountain of youth that takes away old age and makes you young again, etc. Or indeed She, about the man who there's the flame, which makes you immortal. Always in these particular types of stories, there's a catch. Something backfires on the person who tries to attain immortality or rejuvenated youth. And this story, the Asphyx, is no exception. Their experiment goes very badly wrong. And the main character, I won't spoil it for you, but the main character decides to punish himself in a very brutal way. And if you want to watch it, it's on YouTube at the moment. I don't know how long it will last there for, but let's just check. It was on YouTube. Let's just have a look. The Asphyx, Asphyx. The Asphyx. Let's have a look. Yep, it's still there. Let's have a look. What's the copy I had? Yeah, there's actually several copies of it going around. If you want to see it, there's several trailers, and there's also some of them has got different. It's got different titles. The Americans probably gave it different titles. Americans are really, really bad at creating giving things new titles, and they're always really crappy titles as well. Yeah, there's several copies of it actually going around on YouTube right now. Do watch it; it's really, really good. Okay, the second film I want to talk about, another really, really good horror movie, is The Fourth Kind. Now, this is a film I have actually reviewed before. In fact, there's an entire video, in fact, two videos, I believe, on Herpanwo TV reviewing this film. It was quite an experience to watch it, actually, because I went to watch it. I went to watch it at the cinema, and I didn't know anything about it. I'd seen the posters. It had a very, very elaborate marketing campaign, and it was marketed as a docudrama. Essentially, it was as a documentary, a dramatic which includes real documentary footage plus dramatic reenactments and reconstructions of true events. And the places where it happened is a place called Nome, now Nome. Now, if you look on the map, you will find that this place, Nome, is one of the remotest and most inaccessible places on Earth. It's in the far northwest of Alaska, right on the Bering Straits, where North America meets Asia. And you can't drive there, you've got to fly. You can't get there by sea most of the year round because the sea is frozen over with ice. And it's what happens is, you see, is that there's been a huge number of weird UFO sightings and alien abductions in this particular town. And the FBI visited it numerous times, things like that. Apparently that is true. It could be that the director and the writer, it was actually written and directed by someone called Olatunde Osunsanmi. Now, he's Nigerian, or I believe he's American, but he has Nigerian roots, this director. And he appears as a character in the plot. Now, I watched it and I was stunned. I mean, as you know, if you watch the videos, in fact, in the first video I made about it, I was still not sure about whether it was real or not. But it's bloody scary because it traces these very unpleasant alien abductions by a very, very hostile and very damaging, very hateful type of creature. It's got Mila Jovovich, who plays the dramatic reenactments of Dr. Abigail Tyler, the original one. But however, the actual supposed real documentary footage has a woman in it who people say they can't trace. And I thought that originally. It is actually an actress it's a British actress called Charlotte Milchard. And she's been in a few things. She's in this really weird thing called Mind Flesh. It was very, very creepy. Again, a sort of psychological sexual horror film. And she's not a very well-known actress, which is why they used her, I think. That's why they used her. But she has won several awards. But no, it did turn out this is actually not real. It's the supposed found footage, the supposed film footage, which is supposedly real, is not. The characters who appear in the supposedly real documentary footage are actors and actresses as well. It is a mockumentary, it's a pseudo-documentary, whatever word you want to use for it. But it is, so it's rather like sort of War of the Worlds, Ghost Watch, things like that. But of course, these things are always risky to make because they are frightening because people think they're real. And I thought it was real. I came out of the cinema not realizing it wasn't real. For about a day and a half, I thought it wasn't real. So I thought it was real. And it scared me because obviously this is going to interest ufologists because the fourth kind refers to the alien abduction. The Hynek scale of the Close Encounters, 1, 2, and 3. Close Encounters of the third kind, of course, is when you see the aliens, and that's the title of Steven Spielberg's favourite movie on the subject. The fourth kind is supposedly abduction. Now, abduction, of course, takes many different forms, and the particular abductions in this film are horrific, frightening, and damaging, and permanent in some cases. In other words, 2 of the characters disappear and are never seen again. Now, I'd like to be able to tell you that doesn't happen, but it does. So it is actually, as frighteningly as you might think, and it is frightening, that the kind of things that are depicted in this film do actually happen, which is why I thought it was real. And so I was I walked home from the cinema. I had to have a beer in the bar first. I was so shaken. I had my partner, Sue, staying at the time with me, and we had a beer. And my God, is that real? Is that real? Then I did a bit of background research on it. And then I made another film because I thought, well, maybe they're lying about it being a pseudo-documentary. Maybe that's sort of backfilling. But it wasn't. It is actually just a story. And you know what? It's a relief. At first I felt a bit disappointed, but on reflection, it's actually a relief. Although, as I said, these things do happen. And it turns out the story that the FBI is constantly visiting this very, very remote, as I said, one of the most inaccessible, remotest places on Earth. It's literally just a small number of houses around a harbour, and there's an airfield. Most of the people who live there are Eskimos, but the FBI seem to be there all the time, and that begs the question, why is that? Okay, well, as you know, I seem to like... The last 2 films I've talked about are not very famous. They're sort of, not necessarily B-movies, but they're less well known. Now, the film I'm going to talk about next is a very well and very famous horror film indeed. It's The Exorcist. Now, The Exorcist, of course, is a classic. It's actually one of the most famous horror films ever made. It's voted the scariest film ever made. And indeed, when I saw it the first time, it was very, very frightening. It is a classic story of demonic possession, and it involves a normal family. I think they're in Washington, D.C., USA. And the young girl, who's about 12, she's in early puberty, which is, you often get that actually with various supernatural phenomena. It's the focus of a supernatural phenomenon, for example, a poltergeist, is often a girl of around that age, 11 to 13, when they hit puberty. For some reason, that makes them very vulnerable to poltergeist activity and this sort of thing. But this young girl, this sweet little girl who wouldn't hurt a fly, suddenly starts behaving very strangely. She gets hold of a Ouija board and starts playing with it, which is always a bad idea for your young girl. And then she starts behaving very strangely in an antisocial manner, things like that. And of course, it gets worse and worse and worse, where she begins to show her own ability of psychokinesis and things like that. While her voice goes very strange, and she develops superhuman strength and things like that. And it has been voted the scariest film of all time. It's the highest grossing 18 certificate film of all time. And apparently it's been responsible for several deaths. A few people died of shock while watching it. Although I don't know if that's actually you can actually blame the filmmakers for that. I don't think you can. But what's happened is, of course, the mother of this girl, in her desperation, turns to a priest, who's he's a troubled man who's just a local parish priest, and says, "Can you help me?" And he says, "I can't. I can't do an exorcism. You don't do that sort of thing in the church nowadays." But she eventually finds one man who is able to, and he happens to be an archaeologist he's a exorcist trained as a Jesuit priest, and he also happens to be an archaeologist who's digging up this horrible statue. It appears to be connected in some way. But they have the girl is behaving in a horrible manner. She's exhibiting very vulgar behaviour. She's swearing and stuff like that. And I won't spoil the rest of it for you, but there's the exorcism scene where they try to cast the spirit out. And yeah, it's very well done indeed. It's extremely cleverly made. It's well researched, because demonic possession does happen. And how accurate? I mean, I've never actually seen any stories of exorcism like that. I believe it goes on. I know in the Muslim community there's a lot of exorcisms of jinn and things like that. So I'm not sure exactly, but I've spoken several times about the malevolent forces that are at work on a spiritual level, and that sometimes they do get inside people. I think a lot of satanic ritual that the elite go through, especially when they're children, is designed to bring demonic forces into them, and it changes them. Tony Blair is an example of someone who underwent a massive personality change when he was a teenager or a young adult, which led to him becoming Prime Minister. The next really great horror movie I'm going to talk about, it's also, I think, the best zombie movie ever made, is Dawn of the Dead. Now, Dawn of the Dead is the second film by George A. Romero, the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. I've since watched all of them, the entire series. There's actually 6 of these films that were made between 1968 and 2010. And this is the best. It's not surpassed in any way by any of the others. Although they're all worth seeing. They all are. Even the last one's a bit strange. That's the Diary of the Dead. It's a bit odd, but it's still good. It's still pretty good. Definitely not probably the least good, but it's still good. But this one is absolutely classic. And indeed, the remake is nowhere near as good as remakes usually are. But this was, of course, the story. It's kind of there's no actual connection in terms of a story arc between night and dawn. But it's a very, very similar setting. Basically, zombies have started appearing everywhere. Whenever someone dies, they become a zombie, and they sort of wander around undead. If they bite someone when they're trying to eat them and the person survives, they become a zombie. It's the usual Romero-esque zombie tropes, which were essentially invented by those two films, Night and Dawn. But it shows the larger scale effects of this zombie apocalypse on society, which is hinted at in Night, which is just kind of like the beginning of the whole thing. Society started to break down. Civilization no longer exists. The living humans are now sort of like sealing themselves off in various institutions and defending themselves as the undead attack them, trying to eat them. And one of the groups of characters who do so in a shopping centre. There's these four guys. There's three guys and a woman end up barricading themselves inside this shopping centre. Some people say this is kind of a parody of or a satire on consumerism, because the zombies are like trying to get inside the shopping centre and they're desperate to get in. They're hunting the humans. But it's been interpreted as a satire of the need to get in and consume in these massive cathedrals of materialism and things like that. Because, of course, shopping centres are the only buildings we really create in the modern world which have the grandeur of the medieval cathedrals. And they're made for purely materialistic, not spiritual reasons. It's what happens. They do their best. The people inside, they do their best to live their lives inside this shopping centre. And things like that. But of course, the zombies they have to fight off the zombies all the time. And also, of course, other people are also fighting for survival. And that really is that sets the stage for the entire series we're talking about here. All the films in the Dead series approach that kind of angle from with different characters in different situations. The only time there's any kind of story arc actually is between it's Diary of the Dead and then the one before that. All right, yeah, it's there they are. This is the whole thing here: Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead. That was quite good. Land of the Dead, I think, I'd call the second best one. That was from 2015. Diary of the Dead. That's the one I was thinking of. Diary of the Dead. It's not the last one, actually. That was 2007. The last one was Survival of the Dead, 2010. And that's the only time there's any kind of story arc is between Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead. But all the films have the same basic theme. They're all about people who trying to survive in this weird world where, for reasons that are not really explored, there's no real exploration for the reason why this happens. Why, when people die, they turn into zombies. And if someone bites you, it's for some kind of contagion, turns you into a zombie as well. There's never really an explanation given for why that is in the entire series. There's a hint. There's a hint in Dawn of the Dead, actually. And indeed, this became a kind of subtitle for the film later when it was released onto video. One of the characters in Dawn of the Dead, he talks about something his grandmother told him. And his grandmother was a voodoo priestess, and she said, "When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth." That's scary, isn't it? And that was actually explored in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, which is pretty rubbish compared to the original, but it does have some good features. For example, it's basically the same plot, except there's more people in the shopping centre. There's about a couple of dozen of them instead of just the four. And one of the people dies, and they don't turn into a zombie, indicating that they're good guys, and they've gone to heaven instead. They're one of the few. Everyone else would have gone to hell, but there's no more room, and so they just turn into zombies. That's the kind of hint. So in a sense, that little tagline is, "When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth," inspired quite an interesting plot device within the remake. The remake's actually, I think it was, when was the remake? The remake was, and I think it was in the early 2000s. 2004, yeah. Yeah, the remake has a pretty much the same plot. However, it's not as good. Nowhere near as good. Now, the zombies in the remake are actually they're very different to the ones in the original Dawn. They're much more animated and agile. I mean, they run around and things like that. They seem to be more aware of their surroundings. They're not so dopey. But somehow that makes them less scary. I don't know do you understand what I'm saying? I hope you understand what I'm saying here. But somehow it makes them less scary for some reason. Maybe you understand as well as I do why that is. But yeah, do watch that if you can. That's bloody good. It's good. It's so stylish. It's so thought provoking. It's so cool, and it has like a way. Again, he's putting these people. He's seeing how these people cope when they're in this situation. Indeed, that I'm going to talk more about that in the next film I'm going to review, because Stephen King is particularly good at that. And so this is a bit like Stephen King in that respect, even though Stephen King had nothing to do with this. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead, do watch it and watch the original. I mean, there's several different versions. I think there's about... there's an alternative ending. There's about 8 different cuts now. I mean, there's like... They've got different names. I think on the DVD you get a choice now. I'm not sure exactly... I'm not exactly sure what... I'm not exactly sure how that's... What that actually... What the difference is. I've seen 2 versions. I've seen the short, like the cinematic release, and then there's an extended release, which I've seen. There's a few other, but they don't vary that much, I don't think. Okay, the next film we're going to review is The Mist. Now, The Mist is another film that I've reviewed before. It was actually on Hapanwo. I think it was on the main Hapanwo site, actually. And this is a film based on a novella by Stephen King. And Stephen King is particularly good at taking ordinary people and asking the question, what would these ordinary people do if I were to put them into extraordinary situations? And that's what this film is about, because, again, like with Dawn, people are trapped in a big shop. It's not a shopping centre, it's like a supermarket. But basically, it follows a group of people. In this case, it's about 100 people who are trapped inside a shop when something extraordinary is going on outside, and terrifying too. What's going on outside is that a huge cloud of mist comes over the town where they live in. Now, The Mist it's a book by Stephen King. It's not to be confused with The Fog, which is also another book by Stephen King that was made into a film. This is different. But... there's this huge cloud of very thick fog covers the entire town, and it reduces visibility to about 6 feet. And that would be bad enough. However, then you find out that there are horrible creatures in the mist. That's like a tagline. There's something in the mist, and you hear growling and you hear growling and roaring, and then you hear people screaming and things like that. And you realise that there's like some horrible creatures in the mist, and you wonder why. Of course, these people trapped in the supermarket wonder what's going on. And of course, these monsters keep trying to get in, and they are real monsters. They're horrible. They're horrible, like weird insectoid beings. And for a while, no one knows where they are. But then it turns out that there is an explanation for where they come from. Now, there's a big government laboratory nearby, kind of Area 51. Wright-Patterson laboratory nearby, and it turns out that there's scientists there who have a plan to open up a portal to another dimension. And we all know from the experiences of Aleister Crowley and people like that, when you start doing that sort of thing, bad things happen. And indeed, this is, I think, what I've talked before at Boleskine House about. There's an open portal at Boleskine House, which is why there's so many reported ghost sightings and strange fires and weird sounds and things like that can be found there. It's a massive hotbed of supernatural activity, because Aleister Crowley did a spell there in around about 1900. He opened up a portal to the dark world, but he didn't close it again. He left it open. It's still open today. This is, of course, a very extreme example of that kind of thing. The scientists at this laboratory have opened up a portal to another world. And this world happens to be a place where these monsters exist, and they found their way through this wormhole into our world, and they're wandering around the place. And killing people, and there's mist everywhere. It's extremely scary. And of course, these people, when they're faced with this situation, they do start exhibiting some very extreme behaviour. They do start acting in ways which they wouldn't normally. As one of the characters said, people aren't civilized. People are civilized when they know they can call 911, and they know that they pick up the phone and a cardo delivers or something, But you take that away, you scare the shit out of them, and before you know it, they start acting. They revert to a very different kind of personality, and that's true. That's exactly what you see. But others behave in a far more stoic and heroic way. I mean, others keep their heads. Others exhibit more courage, and they keep more sensibility than some of the others. You see, so it varies. Different people behave in different ways. Very, very good film indeed. I've reviewed it, like I said, on her Panmo Voice. If you're a conspiratorialist, conspiratologist, whatever you want to call us, this is a good film because it's about the sort of secret governments and what they do, and you can just imagine this sort of thing being plausible when you learn what's going on at various, or you hear rumours of evidence, not necessarily hard evidence, but rumours of what's going on at secret laboratories. And if government scientists could do something like this, they probably would do something like this. And to hell with the consequences if it all goes wrong. Oh yeah, if they find a way to open up gateways and to other and portals to other universes, damn right they're going to try and do it. Honestly, maybe that's what's happening at CERN. Which it would be almost worth it to wipe that smug, cheesy grin off Professor Brian Cox's face. Just imagine, oh, there's something in the mist. Oh my God. All right, the final film I'm going to discuss in this particular series, in this series of horror movies. Like I said, this is not an exhaustive list. There's probably other films I haven't thought of. But this is the sixth and final addition to my favourite horror movies. And that is Jacob's Ladder. Now, I'm talking about Jacob's Ladder. I'm talking about the original one. Like many of these great movies, it's been remade. And I've not seen the remake, and I probably won't bother because remakes are very rarely any improvement on the original. Usually they're a hell of a lot worse. But Jacob's Ladder is a film it's by Adrian Lyne. It's in 1990, and it has Tim Robbins, who's turned into a little bit of a tinfoil hatter lately, which is quite good. He's been in a couple of 9/11 movies and things like that. But in this particular case, this is very interesting indeed in its concept. But it's about a young man who's a postman, and he is going around trying to live his ordinary life. He has a girlfriend. He has a job. He goes around in New York City. I don't know why so many. I don't know why so many films are set in New York City for some reason. But then he realizes strange things are going on around him. Something doesn't quite look right. He keeps coming across weird creatures, weird, frightening creatures, and going through terrifying experiences with no explanation. He's coming across weird. For example, cars try to run him over. A train tries to run him over on the underground, or the subway, as they call it. And the people inside inside these cars and trains are not human. They're like weird, monstrous beings. And it was one of them. At one point, they even turn up at a party, and he's not exactly sure why. He thinks he might have gone a bit crazy, because like many young men in the 60s and 70s, he was drafted to the Vietnam War, and he was in the army and fought in the Vietnam War. And he finds out rumours from other soldiers whom he knew back then that they'd been used for experimental drug treatment to try and see if they could turn them into lean killing machines with a special drug. But then at the same time, it's weird because the film is in some way inconclusive, because there are two strands of the plot, and they don't really come together. There is an outtake, actually. There's a really, really good, if you Google it, you'll find, just Google Jacob's Ladder outtakes, and on YouTube you'll see there's a missing scene in which when you put that in, And for some reason, it's only 10 minutes long. It was left out of the final movie. When you put that in, it just makes the whole film make sense. But it has other... you see, along with this idea that the soldiers are being force-fed drugs without their knowledge, and that's scary enough, that's a conspiratorial element. It has a spiritual element to it as well. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's all related to things such as near-death experiences, and it's the kind of thing that that spiritual researchers, like names coming up with names. Various people keep coming up with. If you study those who investigate near-death experiences, the afterlife, things like that. Anthony Peake, for example, and life reviews and things like that. All that comes up in Jacob's Ladder. So it's very well done. It's very, very stylish. It's brilliantly atmospheric, and the whole confusion of his situation, where he seems to be moving from one life to another, and memories keep coming up, and things that he thinks are dreams are real, and things which he thinks are real are dreams. It's all very well concocted into the character, and you get a real sense of what it must feel like to be like that and think you're going crazy. It's very, very good. Really good film indeed. Anyway, guys, that is your Christmas Eve Hospital Porter Reacts video. Stay tuned tomorrow if you're not too... Are you going to be too drunk to watch? I don't know, but there will be a Christmas Day special for you tomorrow, and which will be along a similar line. I'll be discussing another genre of movies. Until then, enjoy your Christmas Eve, guys. Have fun. And, take it easy. Thank you, Facebook. Thank you, YouTube, for watching this video.